My name is Nate Kasich, and this is my presentation on Psalms for this week. For this assignment, I chose to do Psalm 139:23. This psalm I really loved in particular because of everything I was able to take away from it. I was able to be profoundly impacted in my spiritual walk with Christ and just grow in my relationship with Him because of this. And I say that because my prayer life was very profoundly impacted of just all the takeaways and reflections I was able to gain upon reading this verse. So, with that being said, let's jump right in. Psalm 139 says, Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. So going forward, we're going to be breaking this verse down into two parts. Part one being, excuse me, titled Search Me, and part two being titled Reveal My Fears. From each part, I will be talking about just all the reflections and applications that I gained from each slice of this verse. So with that being said, let's jump into part one, titled Search Me. And it says, Search me, God, and know my heart. So while we may think we know our hearts and our motives, and we probably consider ourselves good, the Bible tells us to guess again. The Bible actually says that we know nothing of our hearts without God. And that in all truth, our hearts are actually the furthest thing from good, being actually wicked and sinful in every way. And we get this from Jeremiah 17:9, which says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And with that being said, without Christ, our hearts are deceitful and rotten, and deceitful and rotten with sin. Therefore, the closer we get to Christ, who is holy, the more we are forced to face our shortcomings and our imperfections that lie within our critical spirits, like pride and selfishness and lusts and addictions, etc., etc. Within David's prayer, he shows us that the act of coming closer to Christ, it demands conviction, it demands humility, it demands redirection and correction, and just a big change and transformation within our lives. But David also shows us that in this Psalms, that instead of maybe asking God to do something for us, maybe our attention and our wants within our prayers should be more directed to asking God, will you please reveal something within me? Maybe that is a question we should ask more than asking God to do stuff for us. But of course, this is considered a very ambitious thing to do. It could mean that this is not a very pretty process ahead of you upon praying this prayer to God. It can uproot a lot of truths and realities about yourself that could lead to a pretty brutal, slow, and ugly process. But ultimately, in the end, it's going to be very worth it because it's going to reveal your sin. It's going to reveal all the areas in your life where you need to redirect yourself, because you won't be able to come closer to Christ unless you do that first. And I believe, in my opinion, it would hurt, but it's most definitely worth it, as having personal experience this stuff for sure. So moving on to part two, test me and know my anxious thoughts. So reveal my fears is what this is titled. But going forward, the biggest thing I took away from this is what we fear matters, because where we fear the most is also where we trust God the least. In the second half of David's verse here, he asks God to test him and reveal his anxious thoughts to him, aka his fears. We should be challenged to do the same and ask God to do the same for us, because the things that make us anxious and unsettled and nervous and just straight up afraid are also the very things that withhold us from God. We should ambitiously ask God to drag into the light the things that hold our mind hostage, and just the things that straight up terrify us, so that these fears and that all of this anxiety can have a name and be known before you and before God. Because without facing fear, it's just going to grow bigger, and it's going to grow into more fears. And the Bible teaches us that actually perfect love casts out fear. And we get this from 1 John 4:18, which says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. So with that being said, if we're gripped with worry and fear, there is less and less room for things like love and faith, things that rightfully belong to God. And as God brings our sin and our fears closer and closer to the light and drags them straight into it, the more our faith and our courage and our relationship with Him will be built up higher and stronger. And this all to be said, we need God. We need His presence. We need His power. We need His strength. We need His word, His spirit, His guidance. We need all of it. And we're called to trust Him no matter what. We're called to trust Him because we have faith in Him, and we have faith in Him because we love Him. So with all that being said, what we fear the most shows us where we need to grow in our faith and in our courage and in our relationship God the most as well. So let us therefore be ambitious enough and brave enough to ask God to reveal both our sin and our fears, because if we want to grow closer to Him, the first step is doing that first. Thank you so much. This has been my presentation. These are my sources. I pray that God blesses you all wherever you're watching, and I will see you guys soon.